Welcome to the MetalliDads podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Sanford.
And I'm your other host, Blake Metallica.
Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us for episode 11. Lots of things have been announced this week. Kind of crazy as far as all things Black Album and all the covers and all that good stuff, but that is not what we're here to talk about. Today, we have a special guest with us, Doc Coyle, host of the X-Man with Doc Coyle. He's also a guitarist in the band Bad Wolves and previously God Forbid, which is where he gets his name stems from. So how's it doing, man?
It's going all right. It's going all right. Thanks for having me.
Well, we appreciate you. So we're just going to kind of get this thing kicked off. Can you tell us where you're from originally?
I'm from New Brunswick, New Jersey. That is kind of like central New Jersey, but I currently live in Los Angeles, California.
So you're currently in Los Angeles. What's the temperature right now?
It's probably like 75, 76. It's great.
It's about 82 here right now.
With about 7,000% humidity.
Well, keep in mind, I also live like half mile from the beach, so we get that. It's cooler. So like if we're in the valley, it might be like 85, or deeper into Los Angeles. Then you get out to the desert, then it's like 100 degrees. So
I feel that. I didn't, of course, I've only been out west a couple of times. One of those being to make it out to the S&M2 concert, but that was our first time in California. So getting to experience the less humidity and just the different, and this was like September, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So the weather is definitely different. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, New Jersey, East Coast, it's the swamp state. So, I know about that humidity for sure.
Yeah.
So obviously we are Metallica topically based. So I just want to ask you, when were you first introduced to Metallica?
MTV, probably 1992. Around that time, it's really my entry point for metal and hard rock is, it's like I don't know if everyone has this. I grew up in a inner city, mostly Black Hispanic community. So there's just my parents are musicians, but my dad was a jazz pianist, classical. He liked classic rock, but he wasn't really a metal guy or anything like that. So we kind of discovered it on our own, and it was really MTV. I was at a friend's house and saw MTV on, and I saw the video for Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth, and it was like light bulb. It was just like, what? I don't know what this is, but it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. Went home, told my brother, and we had cable, and I was like, we have to watch this thing called MTV. And the thing that's ironic was, at first I just listened to everything that was on MTV. I watched I was watching the R&B stuff and the pop stuff and hip hop, just everything. But slowly but surely, I just more and more gravitated towards the metal and rock, and was like Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Nirvana. But I still love all the music from that era, all the 90s stuff. But I just kept going further down the rabbit hole, and it was like weird for me because it was like Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Megadeth. It was like all at the same time, but slowly but surely Metallica just won it out. I think it was when I got the Live Shit Binge and Purge for Christmas. It was like just absorbing that stuff was just, I don't know, it was just another level of endearment.
Something we always talk about is anytime you mention Metallica, it always sort of gravitates to their live aspect, because obviously their recordings are legendary, but their live performances are also completely different. Anybody that experiences one, typically, if they like it, which I don't know why you wouldn't, they want more. Like, you just can't get enough. One's not enough. Yeah,
and that's how I was essentially introduced to their catalog, was through the Live Shit Binge and Purge. So I remember they actually released Fade to Black and From the Bell Tolls as singles videos, basically, from those performances. And and I always say to people like that, my experience with Metallica is I'm more objective because I didn't live in the world before the Black Album, and then the Black Album came out, and then I was like, oh, here's the new thing. So I kind of looked at everything on the same playing field. Like, I never saw a difference really between For Whom the Bell Tolls and Enter Sandman, because I was hearing it all at the same time. So it was, but it was cool hearing those songs that way, because maybe if I'd heard the recording first, maybe the recording isn't quite as modern as the Black Album. You perceive it differently, but when you're hearing everything with the same production quality, I don't know, it endeared me to their entire catalog. And then, you know, you just realize it's kind of cool to, back then you hear a band or an artist and you think they have like one thing, and it's like, oh no, they have all this other albums, and you kind of go down the rabbit hole, and it's like discovering all this like buried treasure.
See, that's the way it was for us. You got a year or two on us. You said you found them in 92. We were born in 92. So when we came online with Metallica, we had everything from Death Magnetic back to All Discover at Once. And I mean, I speak for myself and Tyler when we say there's no such thing as a bad Metallica album.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's I mean, they're a reason why they're the number one band, and it's not close, right? It's just not. Maybe as a live act, Iron Maiden is kind of like right on their heels, like in terms of selling tickets and things, and in the stadiums and all that. But in terms of the entire bigness, the record sales, the kind of cultural significance. I mean, you even look at the box set that's coming out and the artists that are covering their songs. It's stuff so widespread, and they're getting into their late 50s and pretty soon in their 60s, and they're still almost like just as important to young people and new genres and new and cutting edge artists as they ever were. And that's kind of doing the impossible in many ways, because I don't think you can say that for the Rolling Stones, or I don't think you could say that like when AC/DC puts out a new album, like the people who are AC/DC fans are pumped, but it doesn't move the ground of culture at large. Whereas you know, Hardwired, it was like a global event and everyone cares and everyone takes notice. Actually, it's funny, except for the hater, the Metallica fans who love to hate on new Metallica, which are like some of the people get on my nerves the most.
They're also known as assholes.
It's just the echo chamber of just stuff they've been perpetuating since the Black Album, and they just can't get over it. But in the same way, like you said, Metallica's been able to change through the years and still somehow maintain those people that are hating because they want to hate, but yet they're still sticking around. And then they're picking up the whole brand new generation that's coming in. Like there's 3 generations of people going to these shows, and it's wild.
Yeah, I used to teach guitar at School of Rock for a while, and the one thing I noticed, you know, I don't have kids, so I'm not really around a lot of young kids, but when kids turn 10, 11, 12, it's like, and they pick up an instrument, they want to play the same stuff. They want to play Pink Floyd, and they want to play Led Zeppelin, and they want to play Metallica and Foo Fighters. And there's a reason why that stuff just, some of those records just are, they never lose their significance. I mean, there's like a classic and there's a classic stuff that it just hits our ear. You know, a 12-year-old, when they hear Led Zeppelin or Guns N' Roses, it hits their ears the same way it hit ours, and the same way the kids that were in 1975. And that's really speaks to the power of this music. And it's very specific, I think, to rock music. I don't think hip hop is exactly culturally, hip hop is very much like what is out today, right? And they're very quick to kind of discard, like, oh, that's out of fashion, that's last week. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, it's just different. But there's something about rock metal culture that is very much reverence for the past and these artists that have been able to do this stuff and make this impact, you know.
And it's also interesting how the metal culture, even just from like 2008 to now, has changed so much, but still kind of tries to mirror back to like, especially like metalcore, because I like to think that kind of birthed out of the late 2010s and just kind of exploded up until about 2013, and then gent and all that kind of other stuff. So it's kind of crazy how all that stuff comes about.
Yeah, I mean, look, listen, all these things build on another, you know. I mean, God Forbid, my old band, you know, kind of came out of that metalcore scene, and we were kind of doing the same thing that the thrash metal bands were doing, where we're combining kind of, you know, European metal, American hardcore and putting that together. But all they were doing with the thrash bands was taking the new wave of British heavy metal and combining that with punk, and then you get thrash. So it's the same kind of ideas, almost repeating, and kind of it's very cyclical.
Yeah, I think we had gotten into Metallica when we were in high school. So this was right when Death Magnetic was getting announced. So that's our introductional album. And so around that same time was when metalcore was really kind of booming at the time. So we grew up listening to you with God Forbid and like all that other same genre of music, As Lay Dying and Trivium, and just everybody kind of building this platform together.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're all acolytes of Metallica in the same way. If you were to go back 20, 30 years ago, though, you know, the bands like Metallica, they were acolytes of Black Sabbath, right? Everyone's under that kind of umbrella. And as I think the next generation, right, people your age, a lot of them, their band they look to is Slipknot, right? That's their number one like band that kind of exemplifies what a metal band, a heavy band should mean. And that's good. It keeps passing the torch from one band to the other. But we're all like, if you play metal now and you never listen to Black Sabbath still shaped kind of what you're doing without you even realizing it, in the same way Metallica shapes what some, you know, kids today who might not even be Metallica fans. So, you know, it's just how it goes.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of that decade or that year, our first show was in 2009 when you played with Lamb of God in Nashville.
Oh, that was my first show of the tour. So I was like the most nervous. You saw me at the day I was the most nervous in my entire life. So
I believe it. I would be too.
Oh, we were nervous and we were in the crowd. So
what are you nervous for? You get an A+ just for showing up.
I was nervous to see James Hetfield in person for the first time.
Where were you guys sitting?
Oh, we were on the floor. We don't play that seat bullshit.
Listen, I too was on the floor because every day of that tour, so the tour was 9 weeks, but I only did 3.5 weeks of that tour. And Mark Morton came back. But every day there was a Metallica show. After I was done playing, I went to the floor and watched the show.
Oh yeah, you'd have had to kick me out if you didn't want me on the floor.
But you know what's funny? It actually sounds. One day, a couple of days, I got to go up to the seats just to see some people. It actually sounds better. Like right in that first row of seats, like halfway through, that's like the sweet spot. It still sounds sick on the floor, but I was like, oh shit, it sounds a little better in that mid row.
I'll take sound, or I'll lose sound quality for the chance to be 6 feet from James, Lars, Kirk, and Rob.
Well, that's the thing that people don't realize if they've never been on the floor of those shows in the round is it's only about 5 or 6 people deep. It's not. It maybe on the long sides, maybe it goes back maybe 9 or 10, but it's not that full. Even if
not at all
sold out. So you can get right there and like, you know, there's not like a big gap. So it's even playing those shows that it was kind of, you're playing a show in front of 18,000-20,000 people, but it never felt that way because you were kind of playing to your own little club theater in front of you, and it still felt very intimate. So they kind of, it's a real trick almost of how they kind of do that, of playing these massive venues and really, from a performer standpoint, really shrinking it, and it feels intimate.
Yeah. I mean, I walked away from that show with James telling me he loved me too. He handed me a pic and the fucking shirt off his back. I don't think it gets more intimate than that.
Damn, just like a plain black shirt?
Yep.
It was the one he was wearing the whole show. Yeah.
What brand? Is it like some bougie, like
I've never heard of it until now. And when I got that shirt, it's Blue is the brand.
Blue. Okay. I was
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You looked at, it was probably like a $130 black
guaranteed.
Yeah, it's a bougie Hanes. Like
But here's the thing, as well it should be.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's really, and this may sound extremely creepy, as sweaty as it was, it smelled good. Like that, I don't think that man stinks. Like,
I'm sure he takes care of himself.
Yeah. But I mean, this was after Enter Sandman. So this was right before the Encore. He had played the entire show and the shirt was soaked. So I'm just kind of blown away by that.
On sunshine, right? That's the magic. It was like 1987 you got that shirt, it would not be smelling good. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
So that was actually, like I said, that was our first show ever seeing Metallica, was with them. That had been the first time we saw Lamb of God too. And at the time, we knew who Lamb of God was, but we didn't really know them. But since then, we've become huge fans of Lamb of God.
Well, you're welcome. I really.
So yes, we can have you to thank for that. We wish we would have been bigger fans at the time.
Well, that's what's kind of funny about that tour was, I'm playing with Lamb of God, but you're playing in an opening band capacity to a band like Metallica, where, I mean, Lamb of God is the heaviest band to ever open up for Metallica. So for a lot of Metallica fans, that's a little almost like, whoa, this is kind of, you're coming at me a little heavy. So it still had this underdog trying to win over the crowd kind of vibe. It was still obvious to me that maybe about half the crowd knew Lamb of God, maybe half the crowd didn't. So you still have to go out there and kind of like work it and listen. I imagine for some bands, if they open for Metallica, and they might not get the time of day, if it's the wrong band. So I always approached it that way. And, coming from God Forbid, where we would always be opening up for bands or playing to audiences where you have to really kind of work for it and get, so it's interesting because now I've played in a bunch of different bands, and the mentality always goes that way, where it's like, all right, I hope they like us. Right? Like, that's not even my band, but once you're playing in it, you're like, it's us. I hope they like us, like our band, even though I'm not really in the band. You want that approval.
In that same year, I think it was 2009, and the only reason I even remember some of this stuff is we caught your episode on and Podcast for All as well. You mentioned, and we didn't know this, you mentioned you played with Trivium at some point as well.
I just did one show. We were both on Mayhem Festival that same year, so there was the summer earlier that year, and Paulo was getting his wisdom teeth taken out. It was like a last minute thing, and so he was going to miss the first show, and he called me. He was like, hey, you think you could fill in? It was only 5 songs. Then they had like a couple long songs. So I was like, it was the day before we were supposed to leave. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I'll figure it out. And I kind of like went through the songs and did some kind of mental notes. But then it was like a rehearsal day. And I like went through the tunes with Corey and just, okay, that's what it is. And did the gig. I said, I was just bummed. I couldn't do all his like vocal harmonies and stuff. I was like, I wish I had a little more time. I'd have been really nailing it. So it turned out all right, but it's playing bass, and sometimes, if the bass player's not playing well, they'll just turn you down. But I remember this guy, he was like, yeah, I was like, you started, and I was checking, I was like, okay, he's okay, I'll leave it up.
Yeah, unfortunately for the bass player, that's kind of how it goes for everybody.
Well, you need that low end if the, bass is one of those things that, unfortunately, a lot of metal bands, it's not really at the forefront. But if you were to take it away, it would be very obvious.
Yeah.
It would sound kind of empty and not powerful and not full.
Yeah. Speaking of Mayhem, I actually saw you guys do a one-off in Memphis off the Mayhem tour. It was Trivium, Behemoth, Lamb of God. Not Lamb of God, God Forbid, sorry.
Yeah.
And somebody else opened. I can't remember who. But show was great. We go out to the buses after the show, like all the little fanboys do. And his name's escaping me, but the lead singer for your band, God Forbid, Byron. I've never seen a man look more stoned in his fucking life.
That's weird. He's not a big pothead. Maybe that day he just he decided to toke.
Maybe he was just tired, but I've never seen anybody look more stoned in my life. Yeah, that's possible.
Maybe he had some barbecue. He's got like the hung over from Greece.
Yeah, and it was July, so it was hot as fuck.
Oh yeah, that tour is kind of a blur. There was a lot going on. That was a very strange time for our band and my life. So I'm like, I vaguely remember that. I think about it. You had to use Corey from Trivium to amp at that show. I can't remember.
Wow. All right. It's funny you mentioned barbecue. We have a random Trivium barbecue story. So they came to Chattanooga. I don't know what year this was, but we were in line like 6 hours earlier, way earlier than we needed to be, because this was like a very small club.
They were opening for Five Finger, which blows me away that they were opening for Five Finger.
But yeah, so they were here, and somebody, I think their tour manager came up and was like, "Hey, do y'all know of anywhere like good barbecue wise around here?" We're like, "Yeah, sure, blah blah blah." And they were like, "Well, can you go get it?" And so they gave us money. We went over here to Choo Choo Barbecue in Chattanooga, picked it up, and brought it back. And they were like, "Okay, well, y'all want to do like a band photo op or something?" So we're like, "Heck yeah!" So we went over the tour buses and everything. We didn't get to eat barbecue with them, but
how much barbecue exactly did you get?
Like 60-80 bucks worth.
Okay, that's a good amount. I feel like I'll do right. Depends where you go. Like good barbecue spots in LA actually can be pretty expensive, but depends where you go.
And this one really wasn't the place we should have went. Like looking back now, I would have went somewhere else or told them to go to this place called Bees in Chattanooga, because they have the better barbecue and the better chicken. Random conversation, but
This is before Postmates. So you couldn't like,
Yeah.
what I look like? Grubhub, motherfucker, take your ass to the barbecue spot.
right.
It was
Yeah.
2010, 2011.
Yeah, you had to just get a local who was friendly and would help you out. So you guys
Right. Especially if it's a band you really like and you're like fanboying out and someone asks you to do something, you're like, "Yes. What would you like for me to do?"
They say please.
They do say please.
Yeah.
I think I still have their tour manager's number in my cell phone. What?
Did they say keep the change?
No.
Oh, they were like, give me that $8 back. Okay.
I mean, we got some merch and a meet and greet out of it, so we're not bitching by any means.
Yeah. So while we're on the topic of bands you played at, you also have played with the wedding band with Kirk and Rob, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the last gig I did actually before pandemic time. So it's and I'm me and Rob are pretty close. We talk pretty regularly, and hopefully it'll materialize again soon. I know Metallica, their touring schedule is picking up. Bad Wolves, our touring schedule is kind of up in the air. So hopefully it happens again. It's such a fun gig. It's cool for me because we get to do really a lot of stuff that's out of my wheelhouse, in terms of a lot of the funk tunes and a lot of old rock metal stuff, Judas Priest, Sabbath, stuff that really you have to kind of keep showing your toes. Musically, a lot of that stuff has really unorthodox song structures. Like I'm always making these charts so I can remember, okay, how many times this thing happens. And but it's great. It's a great musical education, and even just it's an education in terms of just being around people that you look up to, people whose careers you want to emulate and hopefully do as well. So like a lot of those situations, I just try and shut up and listen. You get to hear crazy cool stories about back in the day, and because you got Whitfield, who was an Ugly Kid Joe, and he's done so many amazing things. And forget Rob used to play with Jerry Cantrell, and he used to be in Suicidal Tendencies, and he's played with Ozzy. So you almost forget all these things. So you're just getting all these crazy stories, and it's awesome, man. And they created a wonderful environment, which is cool. Just like we go out to eat every night together, and it's like their camaraderie is really important to them. And they just set a great example, because in many ways, they are the ones that have to do it the least, and they care about it the most.
And was it interesting? Like, what was the venue? Was it like an art museum or something? Or
no? So essentially, they booked the gigs. Both gigs that we did, one in Toronto and this one was in Columbia, South Carolina, were geared around Kirk's what's it called?
His horror stuff.
Yeah, his horror movie poster collection. So they basically have a deal with a local museum, and then they'll do events surrounding that. So there was a museum, and at this museum, there was one event. They had like a gala event, essentially like you show up with like a tuxedo and dressed up, and there was like a cover band, and there was food and there was that event, and there was also like Kirk was at another venue doing a Q&A with all these people just talking about horror stuff and his whole thing. And then there's Blackened Whiskey will have like a thing going on, like a pop-up thing, and then there's like a movie showing, and Kirk will go over there and kind of give a speech before so in a way they kind of set up this whole event surrounding that, and then within that then we'll do a gig. And so in Toronto we actually played almost like a showcase room that only held like maybe 200 or 300 people, and this time we had to play an actual theater, like 1,000 cap room, so it felt more like a real rock show. And it was just set up more in advance. We brought in horn players. We had the big wah competition. It was crazy. We did an out. We did like 45 minutes, took a break, did another 45 minutes. It was a whole thing. It was a whole to do. But no, we didn't play the museum. We played at a regular venue.
Okay. There was something at one point. Rob was doing some sort of it was like a small theater showing here locally for a movie that was he producing it, or
the Jocko project?
The Jocko project. And he did a small Q&A afterwards. And him as an individual, I can tell, I didn't get to meet him personally, but he totally shatters what you would think a super rock star mentality should be. Like, cause he is so like a down to earth guy. And to be in the biggest metal band of all time, like, it's unbelievable.
You would never know it, but I think that's also why he's in the position he's in, is that his work ethic and the idea that someone like him, essentially, he does a gig, right? And you see how professional he is, and you see how he has a great attitude, and he nails all the songs. He's great stage presence. He has a great performer, but when everything's done, he's not sitting around asking someone to bring him his robe or bring him his cigar or something. It's like, I've seen him, he moves his own gear and he sets up his own stuff. He doesn't and he's also, if I have to get in touch with him, he gets right back in touch with me. Where you have some people who are like, they think they're hot shots. It's like, you ain't hotter than this guy.
Right.
And I've seen that across the board with people the biggest bands, who, if I call them, they'll pick up the phone, or if I text or email, they'll get back to me. And some people will be a flake because they're too busy. And that shows you that that's what you want to follow. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to follow that attitude. Because of that, Rob's been able to go from one band to playing with Ozzy, and then go from Ozzy to playing Metallica. And you only get that way because you earned it. Yeah. So yeah, he is completely down to earth, but he's also like, he's just a badass. He's such like, it's like, I did this podcast. We had Doug Pinnock from King's X, and we were talking about bass and how bass players are kind of underrated and not really given a lot of credit. But when you play with a really like top-notch elite bass player, it's such a game changer as a musician, where you're just like, fuck, man. And I imagine for Metallica, they're just like, holy, this guy comes in the room and you're like, what the hell? It elevates the musicianship level of the band so much. And it's not to discredit Newstead or Cliff or anything like that. He's a really, really versatile musician, and really studied musician.
I mean, it's the ultimate compliment in Some Kind of Monster when Kirk says, after they play a couple songs, I think he was talking about Whiplash, talking about him being so in the pocket, and he hasn't heard it that good since Cliff died. I mean, I just hang up my shit right there.
Yeah, I mean, but Cliff was also a versatile musician too. He was really into punk and Thin Lizzy, and really was the guy that brought in the melodic element of the band. Whereas Jason is a full-on metalhead, right? He's just tightest. I mean, and Jason, I mean, come on. I mean, there's, in terms of guys who like play with a pick and play thrash metal bass, there's just not that many guys that can do what he could do. His tone was insane. He was so precise. I mean, when you actually go back and listen to the bass tracks on Injustice for All, greatest Metallica songs ever written, and he's just so on point. And I think the biggest thing they lost with Jason was just as a secondary vocalist, he had a monster voice. Like he sounded like fucking Lemmy. And losing that aggression is, that's tough to replace, right? Just, because the songs he would sing lead on Whiplash or things like that, and it was just sick. And so you have to just realize that, you never really replace anyone in these bands. It doesn't mean you can't be replaced, but you're like, everyone is just, you're only the best you, and that's it, right? There's never going to be another Cliff. There's never going to be another Newstead. There's never going to be another Rob, right? But none of these guys can do what the other guys can do. They're special in their own rights.
Yeah.
And that's a double-edged sword, because I like Jason's vocals, but the best thing that came from him leaving or quitting or getting kicked out, whatever you want to call it, was James had to step up live and sing more shit. And James live is just fucking the bee's knees at this point.
Yeah, listen, he, that's what I love about what they did over the summer, where they were putting out all those concerts every week. Is you see a show from '92, and then you see a show from 2014, and then you see a show from 2001, and you could see kind of the evolution of the band, right? Like they were never the same. And when you could see a band play the same song 10 different times, and it sounds different, and it's a different feel, and listen, the fact that they can go up there and do a 3-hour show at their age and just hold it down, it's insane. I've never had to play sets that long, and I'm 10-15 years younger than those guys, so it's like and that's why they're very health conscious. They all take really great care of themselves, diet, working out, obviously,
Stretching.
Not really anymore. They just, but that's the only way you can do it. That's the only way you can keep doing that stuff, is by being really focused on your body, your mental health. It's because it's an athletic achievement to do that every night.
I always hate it. Drives me crazy anytime somebody gives Lars a hard time for not playing any sort of double bass. Sometimes I'm like, okay, first of all, have you ever tried to play double bass? And second of all, you got to realize how old that man is. Like, that's the fact that he can play anything at the amount that he does for as long as he does is a miracle in and of itself. Like, yeah. It's unbelievable.
Singers and drummers are gonna have it the hardest with evolving through the years and trying to keep up with it, because they're using their bodies, and our bodies are finite resources. There's only so much you can do. So I don't play others. I do sing. I'm not a lead singer, but I understand that your voice changes, right? No, this Robert Plant talks about this from Zeppelin, that part of the reason why they don't do reunions is he doesn't feel confident that he can hit those notes properly and do the songs justice. So he just feels that it's better just not to do it. Certain people like Dave Lombardo, from Slayer, who's probably around the same age as Lars, and he can do everything. Charlie Benante, those guys are still flying, but they were always different types of drummers, but there are physical limitations, and this is the first generation of metal players that we're seeing how old can you go and still play this stuff. We're learning that now. They're the test subjects for how long you go, because the art form has only been around since essentially the 70s and 80s. Even I had KK Downing from Judas Priest. He's 69 years old and he's still out there rocking, but he's a guitar player. But Rob Halford, still sounds great. Iron Maiden still sounds great. So some of these guys are proving you can do this into your 60s, maybe into your 70s, and it's amazing. It gives us all a little bit of hope, right? As long as people want to keep you, right, and you can still sound good, and it's wonderful that we can see these careers get extended.
I don't think I've ever thought about it that way, that this is the first generation that we're getting to watch to see how long they want to go.
Stuff isn't that old. Like, people talk about the record industry is over, people don't buy records anymore. I'm like, when people didn't buy records before records existed, like 100 years ago, that wasn't that long. Like, literally, records did not exist. Like music existed in sheet music, and you'd hand it to a piano player, and they played the song. That was recorded music. Was literally sheet music. So the record industry is something that and it's from the time phonograph, like old school records, vinyl to CDs, and then downloading. That's basically from like 1920 to like 2010. That's it. It's like, if you happen to be in one of those bands in Aerosmith in 1970s and sold 80 million records and bought a bunch of mansions, then just consider yourself lucky. But there was nothing written down somewhere that it was supposed to be that way forever.
And it's easier for solo artists to get bigger now. Like, there's no way that some of these like people that get famous from TikTok or YouTube or like that couldn't have existed in the record world, because you would have had to get signed or had to shell out a whole bunch of money to either fail or randomly get successful.
Yeah, listen, I think if we sit here and made the list, right, of here's all the bad sides about the change in the record industry from selling stuff to streaming, and here's all the downsides, it'd probably be pretty even in terms of what are the downsides, what are the good sides. At the end of the day, if you can't control it, right, if you can't change it, then ultimately it doesn't matter. You just have to roll with the punches. But sitting around being mad about it, I mean, I talked about this a lot, but just there's a lot of complaining people. Just it was better. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, but it's over. What are you gonna do? Bitch about it?
Unless you got the DeLorean, shut the fuck up.
I mean, certain artists still sell. I mean, Mr. Bungle, it had Dave Lombardo was playing with them, Scott Ian. They sold, like 30,000, some 20,000 records of their last record, and it was mostly physical.
And that is a feat nowadays.
Base wanted to purchase that. And so for certain artists, I think you still can sell physical. And then some people forget it's not like all or nothing, right? It's not like just because your streams are this number doesn't mean you still can't sell some physical. So it's a mix, right? And I mean, Taylor Swift, like a couple weeks ago, just sold like 100,000 vinyls in 1 week. Jesus. And she's a young artist. Like, yeah, it was literally the most vinyl sold in a week in like 40 years. So it's, a lot of the stuff isn't static. And I do think it's a situation where the pie is growing, right? So there's probably more successful artists now than there have been, or except probably a lot of more solo artists and DJs and electronic people, things like that. But I think artists are starting to realize, like, you just can't depend on the record sales or the money you get from the record to keep you going. That's why, people are doing Twitch and they're doing Patreon and there's all this other stuff to find a way to kind of stay afloat.
Well, I'm ready for any band's OnlyFans, so let's get that out there.
Do it.
Could you imagine? Well, speaking of
OnlyFans?
No, not speaking of OnlyFans.
Static on your mic. It's been like that the whole time. I don't know if you can.
Mine or his?
Yeah, his.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. Well, we get that all the time with him too, like when we're streaming like this. So I think it's just a connection thing, but it records directly to the computer and it usually sounds fine. I apologize about that.
I don't care as long as your show isn't messed up. Just keep it going.
I appreciate that. So speaking of record selling albums, of course, they just announced this week the Black Album remaster. Have you had a chance to listen to the Blacklist trailer or the full Miley Cyrus cover that was released this week?
I watched the one trailer that's like it's like it gave you a little snippet of everything. I think it's really cool. I think it's really creative. Like, at no point did I think it would be a bunch of covers of each song. I thought it would just be like 12 songs and to be one artist covering song. That was going to be it. And it's kind of cool. Like, I wonder whose idea that was. Maybe they put it out there and they're like, well, this artist wants to do this song and that artist wants to do this song. And so like, all right, just let them do it. I think it's exciting. And I think it's one thing. I mean, it's the biggest metal album of all time, right? So obviously, you almost have to think about this box set different than some of the others because its impact is just bigger than every other Metallica album. And so I think they really found a way to highlight that fact that, I mean, if you look at the artists that are doing it, it's so diverse. And it's really, I mean, it's devoid mostly of metal acts, right? It's outside of Volbeat and Ghost and there's also there's maybe one or two more, but I think that's appropriate. I said this because, by the way, this is the second Metallica podcast I've done this week, but the other one was very last minute. I was on Speak and Destroy talking about this, but I actually think it's cooler that it went more in another direction, because I think if you had a bunch of metal covers of these, they'd be too derivative of the originals. Whereas this, it's like, I imagine there are a lot different interpretations, and I like a lot of the artists. I mean, like Chris Stapleton doing Nothing Else Matters. I'm like, that's like, I already know that's gonna be good. I don't even.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I'm dying to hear that.
I can't stand that song at this point, and I will blare it when it comes out.
It'll be like, well, the funny thing is, so I used to work Coachella. I used to bartend before Bad Wolves took off, and then there was another festival at the end of the week, the last weekend, called Stagecoach. It's a country festival in California, and what struck me is all these country artists would all do rock covers. Every band, it'd be like Hotel California, and this band would do, like Fat Bottom Girls by Queen, or they would do Bon Jovi, and it was like, and then those songs, the rock songs, would go over better than the country songs. And then I started to realize, I'm like, I think country isn't even really country. I think they're like frustrated rock fans with nowhere else to go. So they're like, it kind of struck me. So I bet that Nothing Else Matters cover becomes a staple.
Yeah,
no
probably
becomes a Stapleton in his set.
Oh, nice dad joke. I think, of course, I think the John Party one, who's also another country artist, I think his cover of Wherever I Might Roam is going to be really good. The full cover that Miley Cyrus did is actually released.
Yeah, no, but she's doing a whole album, though, I heard, of Metallica.
That's what we've heard too. So it'll be interesting to see if this was like her initiation into that or what. But of course, Elton John's listed on it. He's just playing the piano, but it's not. You can't really, unless you just, because it's listed on there, it's him. But other than that, it's not really spotlighted very well. Yeah. But I was pleasantly surprised. I think it actually went over very well for her. She sang it in a lower vocal range like James does, and I think she nailed it, honestly.
She's an incredible singer. I mean, she's just a great singer. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. That girl can sing her ass off, man. She did was it Say Hello to Heaven at the Chris Cornell tribute? And I don't know if you guys saw footage of that. She was just wailing, man. She's awesome.
Well, if she does a whole Metallica cover album, I'm hoping she covers Last Caress. There's my request.
It'd be good. It's not particularly PC these days, so I don't know. I don't know if that one will happen. So
maybe she'll push the envelope on that one.
Could you imagine? If she does anything from Saint Anger, it'll be a miracle too.
Listen, I don't think it's so funny, because we'll leave the Saint Anger talk for later.
Okay, all right,
it's coming.
It's coming, I'm sure. Okay, so last question before we get into the other questions. Did you get to see, speaking of the shows that they were releasing over the summer of 2020, did you get to catch the Pandemica shows in any of the drive-ins?
Yeah, me and John and Chris from Bad Wolves went, and we had a good old time. And this was like the heart of the pandemic, when you just weren't going out at all. So it was such a relief to be outside. And the funny thing is 3 Days Grace had the opening set, and we're fun with those guys. And I'm just thinking that it's happening live, but they're at home. They're like, because they had it was a pre-taped thing. And I texted, "Oh, you guys sounded great. It was sick." And then same thing, I was like texting the Metallica during the show, like, "This is fucking sick." It was just so much fun. Yeah, it was great. And I feel like they'll never get credit for kind of what they did. The fact that they gave out all those shows for free. The thing about back in the day, right? Like to get a home concert, like I said, those what that box set cost back in the day, $80, and now they're just giving it away, and that was like something we would look forward to every week. Being stuck at home. I mean, I would, we'd have our little like 5 or 6 friends that the only people we'd hang out with during that time, and I would just put on one of those concerts at a hang just to like have it on, and it was a real pleasure. And doing something like that actually brought people together to give you that one moment of feeling like you were at a show again, was amazing, and I really give them all the credit in the world.
And all those shows are still uploaded too. Like it's not like they put them up and then immediately took them down. Like you can go on there today and I think and watch all of them.
It's amazing. And it's and they're one of those bands. It's because we have the situation coming up with the Setlist, where that's what's so cool about it is they'll put out a show, and it's, I remember that actually, what was the one they did? I think they were in like not Chile. They were in Peru. I forget the fuck where they were. Anyway, it was one of the ones where the fans got to vote.
Oh, the by request. We went to one of those.
And it was just, and I'm like, me and John from Bad Wolves, we just like all the time we're texting about Metallica. Yo, did you see? And I'm like, yo, they played this song. Did you check it out? Oh, he's like, dude, I already been checked it out. Because you'd see like a random song that you hadn't seen in a while. They play this track even on the tour I did with Metallica, they played Shortest Straw for the first time in 14 years.
I got to see that.
They played.
I was there for that one.
They played Through the Never for the first time in like 12 years. Things like that, where it was just, and they would change the set list every day, and it was just so fucking cool. And they're one of the few bands that do that, because for bands you really like, you want that, I remember I went to the show out here in LA when they played after the Grammys, and it was the day that when James' mic didn't work, so he was like pissed. It was just a big shit show, right? And so it ended up being really late, and they only played 45 minutes, but they played like only the hits, right? It was only the songs they played every Metallica, and it was cool, but it wasn't, for me, it wasn't that exciting, because I want to see the B-sides, I want to see the deep cuts. And yeah, so that's kind of my relationship with the band live.
I think that speaking of the Pandemica show, I think one of the things that we talked about the most was how some of the songs they had slowed so much. Like Sad But True is the one that sticks out to me the most during the Pandemica show, because oh my God, that thing was so slow and so dirty. Like it was amazing. I wish they would do it that way live. I don't know why it sticks out to me, but it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, well, but I say it's probably good, because usually, especially when I see bands cover that song, they play it too fast. They don't know how to settle into the groove.
Yes, I agree. Oh, they settled hard in the groove for that one. It was so slow. Of course, what sucked about the drive-in that we saw it at, for whatever reason, had the volume on like 3. So, I mean, we had the car turned up as loud as it would go, and it was barely audible.
Yeah.
I did really stupid, where I'm like, man, I can't hear Kirk. And I'm like, and I literally text this guy. I'm like, dude, I can't hear your guitar. This sucks. And you know what it turned out? Fucking car was panned one way. But it was like, I'm like yelling at the guy that mixed it. And I'm like, oh, this fucked up the mix. And it was turned out our car. So it was like a really good test. So.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Well, so let's move on to the questions that we sent you. So anytime we have a guest on, we send the same 3 questions. And the first question is, what is your dream set list?
Okay, so this is pretty serious. I picked 18 songs. This is a full set. I ain't doing, this is like, the full on set. So, okay. I thought about this, and it covers all the albums for the most part. So we start out modern classic, Spit Out the Bone. All right.
Good opener.
Okay. All right.
Number 2, right? Of Wolf and Man. All right. We just keep it going. All right. To the end. Right. They're pumped. Okay. Then, all right. Then another low key. I guess you'd call this a deep cut at this point. Is Broken, Beaten, and Scarred from Death Magnetic, a song that I don't think people really give the proper respect it deserves. That song is grooving.
Oh,
all
we
right?
do around here. We love that song.
Called a neck snapper.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we got people. Now, like I said, this is not for the casual fan. This set, all right? This is for the real motherfuckers, all right?
We're here for it.
Okay. Number 4, going for cover, Helpless.
Okay.
Right. Help, you know what I'm saying? That's just so it was tough inside this and the weight, but I decided to go Help. A lot of energy, really exciting. Now, I felt we need to bring it down a little bit. All right, we had a lot of bangers, a lot of head banging. Now we'll go No Leaf Clover.
Ooh, okay. Yes.
And then and while we're in the field of epic, we're going right into Orion. Right, we're just keeping it epic, right? Maybe bring some strings people come out there, do some S&M style stuff. All right.
Did you get to make it out for those shows?
No, I didn't even really consider it. Here's the thing, just even though I'm friends with the guys and play with them, I don't try and like bug them for tickets and things like that. Like even the last time I think I went to Metallica, I think I just bought tickets.
Let me tell you what, it was a motherfucker to get tickets for S&M too.
Like it was I think that was probably one of the hardest shows to get tickets for. That was the one that I saw the most complaints about because it was through Ticketmaster and all the bots buying all the tickets. It was just something.
I'm sure just to get any seat there on resale market is probably at least $1,000.
Oh yeah, we got lucky and got them on sale when they went on sale.
So I did not, and yeah, I don't know, shit like that. I'm like, that just sounds like too much trouble, and I'd rather not go into my savings. So,
yep, I hear that.
We're beg.
Yeah.
So then now we're going another deep cut song. Apparently, Metallica's never played live. Escape from
Played it once.
Once.
Yeah. The Orion Festival 2012. They played Ride the Lightning front to back.
But you get to see it for the second time, and it's amazing.
Yeah, we got to see it.
It's so good.
Fucking awesome.
Listen, Hatebreed covered it and Gojira covered it, and it both are sick. So it's like, yo, just bring in the set. Apparently, they don't like the song, which is
yeah, I don't know why either.
Now Escape, you know what I'm saying? It's nice and groovy, and it's got the groove. But now we're bringing the energy back up. Damage Inc. baby.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay,
that's good.
We're just bringing the thrash in, and then now it's like we've been thrashing a lot. Now we're gonna bring it back down. Unforgiven 2.
Oh, good choice.
Yes. Oh,
my favorite of the Unforgivens.
Okay, and then my second favorite song from And Just for All, Shortest Straw. We're bringing the groove back because I had to have it in there. And then I think maybe the most underrated Metallica song, Ain't My Bitch.
Yep, that's a good one.
Yep, I agree.
We love load and reload over here.
I guarantee you, I don't know when last time they played this song or if whenever, but I know people be feeling it. All right, people be guzzling Coors Light, okay, high-fiving. All right, one couple yeehaws in the crowd when Ain't My
Yes, and James can wear his cowboy hat too. Just bring the whole thing together.
Yeah, and because at this point I was like, I don't have anything to kill them all. What song do I really want to play? What's one that just I think needs some respect is No Remorse. All right, so we got No Remorse. Then Wherever I May Roam. Okay, because listen, Black Album's my favorite album, so it's like either this or Struggle Within. I was like, you know what? I need a hit. I've been doing a lot of B-sides, right? I need a hit. I need one that just scratches all the itches where it gets everyone singing, but it's also just a crowd pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I'm bringing the thrash back, baby. Actually, hold on. You know what? That's so funny. I literally put a song twice. 17 songs. Excuse me. All right. Bleeding Me All right.
Mm.
Epic, heart wrencher. All right. Then people think that's the end of the show. All right. Now we do Encore. Come back for Encore. Merciful Fate medley.
Yes, that was in your set list. I think it was in the Encore.
It was.
Medley into Moth into Flame. All right. Modern classic. And we close the show with Blackened.
Oh, man.
That's a solid fucking set list.
I love me some Merciful Fate. Like, that cover is so good. And we have a joke about it because anytime we hear the original, I don't know what the real song's name is, but the part, how does it go?
When James just fucking...
Oh, he's like, in for the kill. Like anytime you're seeing like a band in a small club show and, you know, they're playing the prelude music over the PA or whatever, you're just waiting on the band to come out and they'll play a random song. Anytime that song comes on and it gets to that part, we just scream Hetfield's part because that's not in the original, but it's just so funny to do that.
My favorite part is, I was born in the cemetery in the east side of Bowo.
It's just such a good song. The vocals are so good. Like, oh, that's good.
You can't mess with it. And that cover, see, I say that's the best bang for your buck on a jukebox. You're getting it for like 11 minutes. All right. It's really like 4 songs in one, but it costs the same as one song. All right. And you'll be headbanging and singing along and pumping your fist. It's amazing.
Yep. All right. Well, that's your set list.
That's a solid one. I'll give you that.
I agree. You want to ask the second question?
I might even make this as a playlist for myself, just so I can enjoy my songs.
I have mine in a playlist because that's just kind of how I did it. Like, I wanted to listen to it as I went along. So I guess I just kind of played a song and then I was like, okay, what do I want next? And then I just kind of built it from there. So I feel that. Okay. So, if you had to remove one album from the discography as if it never existed, and it can't be Lulu and it can't be Garage Days, so it has to be studio album, what would that be?
I mean, like I said, I think it's pretty obvious. It's Saint Anger. And only reason why is because I don't really think Saint Anger is a real record. Because if you watch Some Kind of Monster, it seems like it was the demos. And instead of like finishing the album, they just cut the demos up and like mixed it and he sang on it. So it's like, I almost feel like it's not done, if that makes sense. Like it feels like a record. Like, I do think there's a great album in there. And I think there's great parts and there's great there's great songs where it's like, this is 3/4 of a great song, but it's because of the production, the presentation, and I think the normal rigor that they go through with the song and the meticulousness of a Metallica album, I don't think it's necessarily there. So I think you could have crafted all of what we consider to be the standard of great Metallica songs within there. It just wasn't brought to that point. But in many ways, I think they kind of had to make that album. Like, they were known for they're making the albums that were the tightest and were produced the best. And it was almost like some type of expulsion, right? They had to like get that out of their system just to, I think it speaks to their self-confidence that they're willing to kind of put out something that's not perfect and be okay with it. More so than a lot of bands that need to fix everything. I don't know. So, but yeah, if there's one, yes, there's one I don't really listen to regularly, but I do appreciate it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best descriptions that I had that I've ever heard was from Clint and Ethan with Metal Up Your Podcast when they did an episode of them listening to the live little DVD that they released of them doing all the songs from beginning to end. Have you ever seen that one before from Saint Anger?
What is it? So what is this again?
It's the DVD that came with a special edition.
When they play, when they jam it, and it sounds better than the album.
It sounds better, but it also, because they played it exactly how it is on the album, but they described how if they would have done that first and done it like 3 or 4 times, you can almost guarantee that album would have been completely different. because they would have been like, these songs are either way too long, too repetitive, or they just don't make any sense collectively together. They just don't make sense live. So if they were intending to play any of them live, they would have re-recorded it.
Yeah, listen, I think the tuning, I don't think serves the Metallica sound. I think what we kind of understand what that sound is. And I agree, because I went to the first Metallica show I ever went to was on that tour, and definitely when they played those songs, it just didn't feel, it doesn't, like, to me, one of the defining characteristics of a Metallica song is the epicness. And those songs feel more like a garage band, right? Like it sounds like a band you just see, like some metal band rocking out in a club, and it's cool and it's sick and it's heavy, but Metallica songs are built for stadiums and arenas, and there's something there's a nature to that isn't congruent. But like I said, I think whatever they were trying to get across with that is completely, like, they're true artists. And I'm very much in the idea of letting artists do their thing and go out and, like, and you know, and ultimately they gotta, there's a relationship between a fan and a artist, where we want the thing we expect out of them that we like, right? There's kind of thing, if they don't like, if Metallica multiple times in a row didn't kind of give the consumer what they wanted, then you would see their star fade, right? But eventually they got back to something that I think was more in line with what the fans wanted, but I still respect their right to kind of scratch whatever itch they have to for themselves.
Yeah. It's like when they were doing some, like, sprinkling in some St. Anger songs on this most recent tour, I think it was like one of the first times that they did St. Anger. I remember listening to the video of it on YouTube, and I was like, this is not good. And I hate, and I'm a Metallica purist. Like, I don't think they can do anything wrong. So I would hate for them to, like, go down that road and just give fuel to some sort of fire that people could just hound on them. Like, they're just no good anymore. Like, they can't handle it. And so, like, if that keeps them from having those bad experiences, or because I have a feeling they probably knew that it was probably kind of rough, but I don't know. So if that tells you anything, that, you know.
Listen, I think it's tough, because you gotta remember that time was kind of like the peak of, like, new metal, and they probably had that thing that's happens to a lot of bands, where you're doing a thing and it feels like you're like old week's news, right? Like you're not keeping up with what's happening. So I think maybe they felt some internal pressure to, like, conform to what was going on in music, and maybe that was tuning low, or maybe that was not having guitar solos, or whatever. But listen, it's I don't know, listen, I think it's an incredible artifact of just musical history and culture that we always can kind of, like, it's gonna be something that's fascinating. And because I can't decouple the album from the documentary, right? To me, it's like, in some ways the documentary is more interesting than the album. It's like but that is actually, to me, that's almost the album.
Yeah, it helps you understand it more. Like, you can't, if you were to listen to Saint Anger, then go watch the DVD, and then go back and listen to it again, you would listen to it completely different.
Well, yeah, but it's a reflection of where the band was, which was kind of like maybe not necessarily functioning on all cylinders.
Well, it definitely helped give an explanation. Like, if had we not had that documentary, there would have been so many questions unanswered. But because we do have it, it's like, oh, I see why now. So thankfully we do have it, because that's one of the best documentaries ever made. So
I love it being in a band, because there's so much, like, bullshit out there, and it was easy to relate to it, because a lot of being in a band is being in turmoil and arguing and not being happy with each other, and all that ugliness. Maybe I think that's what the record is, right? It's kind of an ugly record, and they're like, hey, this is what was going on, this is where we were at, and this is what came out of that experience. And so in a sense, maybe it's the truest version of Metallica at that point. And so they're just that's a reflection of their honesty.
yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, totally agree. All right. So that was question number 2. Question number 3. What would you consider your most favorite Metallica experience? So that could be shows, albums, any sort of situation you can put yourself in.
Well, I looked at the question. I thought it was a show. So what the moment I cued in on was I was actually at the Orion Festival in Atlantic City, but not the Ride the Lightning Light. I went to the Black Album night. And so this was not too long after I toured with the band. So I was able to get some really great passes. And I got in the Snake Pit. So if you don't know what the Snake Pit is, it's a little kind of diamond or like triangle area right at the front of the stage, and the band members literally have these catwalks all around you and they walk around you. So I mean, there's maybe 500 people in this space, and you're at a festival with 30,000-40,000 people, however many people were there, and it was just the coolest experience because you're right there, right? And it's the Black Album. It's my favorite album, and the way they did it, the fact that they played it in reverse order,
yes,
was the coolest. I'm like, they always do the right thing. They always do the thing that's
I know they're geniuses.
seems obvious or seems like after the fact, but then you're like, oh yeah, like that's not normally what people do. And I was singing along everywhere. I was like losing my voice, and this is, by the way, this is an experience I had there that has since been repeated, where I'm at a show, like an exclusive area of the show, and I'm singing along, and I kind of look around and I'm like, people ain't really singing along like I'm singing along. So I realize that I'm a bigger fan than most, even ones that'll be in like the front area of a show like that where it's like really expensive tickets. But it's also the fact that I think a lot of those tickets are so expensive, maybe it cuts out some of the super fans who can't afford to be in those spaces.
Yep.
So I was like, man. And by the way, the second time this happened, or it happened a couple times, I went to see Guns N' Roses, and I'm like singing along to like songs like Coma, like every word, and I'm looking around and no one's singing along. I'm like, look at these mark ass trick. I saw Guns N' Roses at the Palladium in LA. It's like a 3,000 cap room, and they did this super last minute show, and I literally scalped tickets for like $300 outside. And dude, and they took so long to come on, right? I mean, they were supposed to play at 10. I don't think they went on until close to midnight.
Jesus.
Whoa.
And people just waiting. People were leaving. People literally spent hundreds of dollars on tickets and just left. And by the way, and they played like they do like 3-hour shows. It's like and by the halfway through the show, like half the crowd is gone.
That's insane.
So I'm like, so Guns N' Roses is playing, and I'm literally walking. I'm 20 feet from Guns N' Roses because people just couldn't hack it. I'm like, you know what? Because a lot of those shows, these are like big dollar shows, right? There's like people scalp the tickets and they're selling for $500-$600. And I was like, you know what? I'm the real deal. All right. These are suckers. All right. And so I've experienced that, so a lot of times the people that can afford the great tickets aren't necessarily the biggest fans. They just got the most money.
Right. So 2 things. Snake Pit is quite an experience. I've done it twice. Tyler's done it once. I actually proposed to my wife in the Snake Pit in 2017. I had I shelled out the money for a meet and greet with all 4, and I had them sign a ring box. And when they came down to the end of the catwalk to play Seek and Destroy, got down on one knee, did the whole thing. Lars almost ruined the surprise before I'd popped the question. So that was fun. And then I forgot what the other thing was.
We were at Orion. That's probably what you were going to say. Yes,
yeah, we did both.
You did both.
Yeah.
There you go. See, you traveled. I was living in New Jersey at the time, so it wasn't that big of a deal for me.
Yeah, we drove from Chattanooga, Tennessee to New Jersey.
Yeah, drove.
Well, I mean, listen, that was an experiment because Atlantic City is, I'm from New Jersey, and I've probably been there like 3 times in my life. Like it's
wow,
down in Jersey. So They tried to make it work. I don't think it did ultimately did that well, but
It did.
I thought it was a cool festival. I thought the lineup was amazing. I loved how diverse it was. It was cool.
I think that unfortunately, because it wasn't successful, that's why obviously they haven't done it again. But I think they should do it again. And if they need to cut costs, just let it be them. As much as I loved the diversity of all the bands that were there, they proved with the second half of the World Wired Tour that they can handle full tours by themselves.
Well, it's this kind of thing though, where in a sense, like if it's Metallica's festival, people kind of really mainly care about Metallica, and that they will draw more on their, like if they would have just didn't call it Ryan Festival and just like Metallica and Friends, it probably would have sold more tickets. Like sometimes big bands, when they put their name on a festival, it's like worse marketing than if you just sell it as a Metallica thing. I've seen that happen a few times, and I think that's why it's just better for them to just play another festival that already has a built-in audience, because the truth is Metallica can draw just as many people as the festival. They don't, you know what I'm saying? So it almost, it's counterintuitive, right? You think, oh, it's addition, but tour lineups and festival lineups, it's not addition, it's chemistry. It's like this thing with this thing kind of, it creates this little kind of alchemistic thing out the other end that's not always predictable.
Well, and I think you probably saw it because you were there for the Black Album Day. Like the fact that Eric Church opened, I thought that was awesome. Like that killed for me. Like I didn't really know who Eric Church was, but he gained a fan at that show because I couldn't get enough of him after that. I thought that was a great show. So
yeah, and who knows? Maybe it was just because they held it in Atlantic City, and if they would have had it in, San Francisco or Seattle or I don't know, somewhere else, then maybe it would have done better. And it was just, I don't know, it was a little too niche, or maybe it was because it was too diverse. Maybe if it was more metal bands, maybe who knows? Who knows how these things work? I certainly am not the genius.
no, me neither.
I remember what the other thing was. So Black Album Night 2. How about that sing along to My Friend of Misery?
I don't remember. Was it where people really sing along? Listen, I just know I was singing along.
Go back to YouTube and search that one. I can listen to it to this day and still get goosebumps from the sing along.
Because it was when James was doing the split harmonies in the crowd.
Here's the thing. I feel like I might have to take Wherever May Roam out of the set list and put my
yeah.
That one
well, you had 17, so you get an extra song.
Yeah, it's such an underrated song.
Yeah.
It's so good, man. God.
Yep. It's very good. Well, we've pretty much reached the end of our time here, so we really do appreciate you coming on. Is there any way that I could get you to do a favor for us and do a shout out?
Sure, just say
for our intro? Just say your name and what you're from, and this is the MetalliDads podcast. Would you care to do that?
Hey, what's up, people? This is Doc Coyle from the band Bad Wolves. I'll just let you know you're listening to one of the greatest Metallica podcasts out there. I mean, it's definitely in the top 11 to 13 Metallica podcasts. This is the MetalliDads podcast, and it'll get you pregnant, and pretty soon you'll be a mom or dad who likes Metallica.
Dude, that was perfect.
Yes, it was.
That totally fits our vibe, because let me just tell you, we get on some sort of tangents. Like I think 2 episodes ago, we were talking about Kmart. So, we cover all topics. So
there you go.
That's definitely my favorite intro. Thank you so much.
Problem, man. Well, listen, because I have a podcast, I go out of my way to kind of do other, smaller podcasts to help out and kind of pay it forward and help the community. So it's something I care about. So I'm just,
we genuinely appreciate it.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
No problem. Listen, you fellas have a wonderful rest of your week, and just keep rocking, man. Thanks again.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
All right, you have a good one.